Bruce Lee. The name alone reshaped martial arts forever. Lightning fast, precise, unstoppable. Then there was Bolo Yeung, the Chinese Hercules, a mountain of muscle whose presence alone could silence a room. In Enter the Dragon, they lit up the screen. Bruce as the hero, Bolo as the menacing enforcer. But what fans didn't know is that behind the cameras, these two legends clashed for real. Not scripted, not choreographed. A private fight where Bruce's speed met Bolo's raw power. It was quick, it was brutal, and it left witnesses stunned. For a moment, it wasn't Hollywood. It was survival, pride, and respect colliding. This is the fight you were never supposed to know about. To understand why this fight mattered, you need to know who Bruce Lee and Bolo Yeung really were outside the camera lights. Bruce Lee wasn't just an actor. By the early 1970s, he was already a global phenomenon. He had trained in Wing Chun under the legendary Ip Man, then went on to create his own philosophy, Jeet Kune Do, a style built on speed, fluidity, and adapting in the moment. He wasn't just fast, he was revolutionary. Every movement was stripped of waste. Every strike was about efficiency. Bruce believed that the truth of a fighter was revealed when nothing was planned. On the other side stood Bolo Yeung. Long before Hollywood cast him as villains, Bolo was a bodybuilder and martial artist in Hong Kong. His size was shocking for the time. Huge muscles, chiseled frame, and raw strength that made him look like he could tear through steel. While Bruce was lightning, Bolo was thunder. He trained in powerlifting, studied martial arts, and had the reputation of being almost impossible to move once he planted his feet. When Enter the Dragon began filming in 1973, the two men were instantly compared. Bruce was already the star, the face of martial arts cinema. Bolo was cast as the perfect on-screen monster, the villain who looked like no one could defeat him. But behind the scenes, whispers started. Who would actually win if it ever got real? For the stuntmen, extras, and crew watching, this was more than a question. It was the ultimate clash of styles. Speed versus power. Precision versus brute force. Art versus raw muscle. And when egos collided, the answer was about to be revealed. It didn't start as a planned fight. It started with pride. During breaks on the set of Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee was known for testing stuntmen. He wasn't being cruel, it was his way of sharpening everyone around him. He'd throw quick jabs, playful kicks, little tests to see who could react fast enough. Most couldn't even come close. Bruce's speed was unreal. He once placed a coin in someone's palm, said he'd swap it before they could close their hand, and by the time they snapped their fingers shut, they were holding a different coin. That's how fast he was. But Bolo Yeung wasn't like everyone else. He wasn't a man who could be pushed around, even in jest. His body was built like armor, and unlike the other stuntmen, he didn't laugh off Bruce's playful tests. He matched him. He blocked. He fired back. And soon the whispers turned into shouts. Bruce and Bolo should go at it. One afternoon, it happened. The crew gathered, a circle forming around the two titans. No cameras, no scripts, just silence. On one side, Bruce, lean, focused, his eyes locked like a predator. On the other, Bolo, towering, muscles coiled like springs, his jaw tight. Bruce made the first move, a blur of motion, a jab so fast most people didn't even see it until it snapped back. But Bolo didn't flinch. He absorbed it, like stone taking a hammer strike. The crowd erupted. Then, Bolo countered, a shove that looked more like a tidal wave. Bruce slid back a step, not off balance, but tested. For the first time, people saw Bruce's grin fade into something sharper. This wasn't just fun anymore. This was two worlds colliding. The rhythm built quickly, Bruce darting in and out, peppering Bolo with strikes aimed at pressure points, ribs, thighs. Each one would have dropped a normal man, but Bolo took them, grunting, tightening, moving forward like a wall of muscle. He wasn't fast, but when he swung, it was like an iron club cutting through the air. If one of those connected, it could have ended everything. The energy on set turned electric. People leaned forward, holding their breath. What was meant to be a bit of sparring was now something else. This was the real question being answered. What happens when the fastest fighter alive meets a human powerhouse who doesn't break? And in that moment, everyone realized this wasn't going to be an easy win for either man. The circle around them tightened. No one was laughing now. No one was even breathing too loudly. This was no longer friendly sparring. This was a test of willpower, strength, and speed. The kind of clash martial artists dream of but almost never see. Bruce was the first to commit. He slid in low, lightning quick, and fired a kick straight to Bolo's thigh. The crack of bone on muscle echoed across the set. Bolo staggered back half a step, but instead of pain, he smirked. That was the moment everyone realized. Bolo wasn't just muscle. He had a pain tolerance that bordered on inhuman. Bruce pivoted, switching levels. A high jab, then a body shot, then a low sweep. His signature a chain attack, designed to overwhelm. But Bolo didn't crumble. He absorbed each blow like a bull charging through arrows, his thick frame refusing to fold. Finally, he lashed out with a backhand that cut the air like a whip. The slap missed Bruce by inches, but the force alone was enough to stir the air. People in the circle gasped. If that had landed, Bruce's head might have snapped sideways. Bruce grinned, but his eyes sharpened. He couldn't out-muscle Bolo, that was clear. The only path was precision. He darted forward again, this time unleashing his infamous one-inch punch, a compact burst of power straight into Bolo's chest. The sound was like a gunshot. Bolo stumbled, his body jerking back 2 full steps. For the first time, Bolo's smirk vanished. But the beast inside him woke up. Bolo roared, a sound more primal than human, and charged. He swung wide, a massive hook aimed at Bruce's ribs. Bruce twisted, just barely evading, but the sheer force of the strike grazed his side and spun him off balance. The crew gasped. Bruce Lee, the untouchable master of speed, was forced to recover. Now the fight escalated. Bruce danced around Bolo, darting in with precise strikes, snapping kicks to the shin, elbows to the shoulder, jabs to the face. Each time, Bolo swung back with terrifying power, punches that rattled the ground when they missed, kicks that seemed to shake the air itself. It wasn't just skill versus strength. It was finesse versus fury, speed versus endurance. Every clash drew a collective gasp. One hit from Bolo could end it all. But if Bruce could find the opening, one perfect strike would be enough to finish. Then came the moment no one forgot. Bruce feinted left, slipped right, and launched a lightning-fast sidekick aimed at Bolo's ribs. It connected, a clean, crushing blow. The sound echoed. Bolo's massive frame lurched sideways. For a second, it looked like he might fall. The crew leaned in, holding their breath. But Bolo didn't fall. Slowly, he straightened up, chest heaving, eyes burning with fire. He touched his ribs, winced slightly, then smiled. Not out of arrogance, out of respect. The circle erupted with noise. The fight had reached its peak. 2 warriors, both refusing to break. And then, almost as suddenly as it began, Bruce stepped back, hands raised. He nodded. Bolo, still breathing heavy, returned the nod. There was no winner, no loser, just an unspoken truth. They had tested each other, and both had survived. The crowd of crew members broke into applause, cheering the spectacle they had just witnessed, a fight that wasn't meant for the cameras, but one that became legend. When the fight ended, the silence on set was deafening. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if the crew had just witnessed history, a private duel between 2 forces of nature. Bruce broke the silence first. He walked toward Bolo, calm, but breathing heavier than usual. He extended his hand. Bolo, chest rising and falling like a storm barely contained, stared at Bruce for a long second. Then, slowly, he gripped Bruce's hand. Their clasp wasn't just a handshake. It was a declaration, mutual respect, warrior to warrior. From that moment, something shifted. The tension between them evaporated, replaced with a strange brotherhood forged in combat. Bruce had proven he could hold his ground against raw power. Bolo had proven he wasn't just a bodybuilder for show. He could take punishment from the fastest man alive and still stand tall. But the story didn't end there. In the days that followed, whispers of the fight spread through the Enter the Dragon set like wildfire. Crew members who had seen it couldn't stop talking. Each retelling added to the legend. Some swore Bruce had knocked Bolo down. Others insisted Bolo had nearly crushed Bruce. The truth was simpler, but more powerful. Neither man broke, and that fact alone turned the fight into myth. Behind the scenes, Bruce began to treat Bolo differently. Instead of looking at him as just another supporting actor, Bruce saw a kindred spirit, someone who understood pain, discipline, and the brutal honesty of combat. He even gave Bolo more space to showcase his physicality on camera, letting the world see not just an intimidating figure, but a true fighter. Bolo, in turn, carried the memory of that day for the rest of his career. In interviews years later, when asked about Bruce Lee, Bolo didn't just talk about the movie. He talked about the man, his intensity, his lightning-fast speed, his relentless energy. And though he rarely spoke about the fight directly, those who were there knew it had left an indelible mark on him. What's more fascinating is how the fight seemed to fuel Enter the Dragon itself. Watch the movie closely, and you'll see the difference. Their on-screen battle wasn't just choreographed moves. There was electricity between them, a tension that couldn't be faked. The kicks, the strikes, the glares, they weren't acting. They were reliving a moment both men already knew by heart. And when the film premiered in 1973, audiences could feel it. Millions were mesmerized by the showdown, not realizing that behind the camera, something even more explosive had taken place. But perhaps the most striking legacy was what the fight revealed about Bruce Lee. Everyone knew he was fast, skilled, and innovative, but this fight proved something deeper, that Bruce could stand against a mountain of power and not back down. It wasn't just skill, it was courage. And it was that courage that cemented his legend far beyond martial arts. For Bolo, the fight gave him something priceless: credibility. No longer just the bodybuilder with muscles, he became the man who once stood toe-to-toe with Bruce Lee and survived. That alone made him a legend in martial arts cinema. In the end, no one on that set ever forgot what they had seen. And decades later, fans still whisper about it. The real fight between Bruce Lee and Bolo Yeung, hidden behind the bright lights of Hollywood, but remembered by those who knew the truth. The fight between Bruce Lee and Bolo Yeung didn't just vanish into the shadows of film history. No, it lived on, quietly, as one of those rare whispered stories that grow bigger with every retelling. What happened that day wasn't just about two men testing each other. It became part of the mythology surrounding Bruce Lee, the man who had already started to transcend martial arts and step into legend. Think about this. Bruce passed away in July of 1973, the same year Enter the Dragon was released. That shocking death froze him in time, just 32 years old. He was never given the chance to fade away, never given the chance to slow down. He remained eternal, a symbol of raw discipline, innovation, and fearlessness. And this fight with Bolo, it became one more piece of the puzzle that made him larger than life. For fans, the mere idea that Bruce took on Bolo behind the scenes gave him an almost mythical aura. Here was Bruce, not just performing in front of cameras, but truly testing himself against one of the most powerful men in martial arts cinema. The story reinforced the image that Bruce was not only a master, but also fearless. He didn't shy away from challenges, he invited them. And for Bolo Yeung, This moment was transformative. Before Enter the Dragon, he was known in bodybuilding circles, respected for his strength and physique. But after that film, after standing face to face with Bruce, Bolo was forever etched into martial arts history. He became the iconic villain, the man with the massive chest, the crushing power, the cold stare. But here's the fascinating part. While Bolo went on to star in dozens of films, from Hong Kong action hits to Hollywood blockbusters like Bloodsport, he always carried a kind of reverence for Bruce. To him, Bruce wasn't just another co-star. He was a standard, the measuring stick for intensity, work ethic, and authenticity. This fight changed how Bolo was seen. It gave him credibility that no amount of muscles alone could buy. Fans looked at him and thought, if he could hold his own against Bruce Lee, then he's the real deal. That aura stuck with him for decades. Meanwhile, for Bruce's fans, this fight fed into the eternal debate. Just how good was Bruce Lee really? Could he have dominated real fights outside the movies? Could anyone have matched his speed and technique? The encounter with Bolo became proof to many. Bruce wasn't just for show. He had tested himself against one of the strongest men alive, and he had walked away with respect, not defeat. And here's where the legacy deepens. The fight symbolized something bigger than two men. It represented two extremes of martial arts: speed versus power, philosophy versus raw strength, precision versus brute force. And yet, when the dust settled, neither one had lost. They had both gained something: respect, brotherhood, and most importantly, immortality in the stories that fans still tell today. Even now, decades later, martial arts enthusiasts bring up the question, did Bruce really fight Bolo? Who won? The truth is, the winner doesn't matter. What matters is what the fight revealed about both men. Bruce showed the world that speed, skill, and mental toughness could stand up to pure power. And Bolo proved he wasn't just muscle for the camera. He was a fighter who could survive against the best. Their on-screen showdown in Enter the Dragon became iconic not just because of choreography, but because audiences could feel something real underneath. That fight on film carried the electricity of their private duel, and that's why it still feels raw and unforgettable even 50 years later. Today, when people talk about Bruce Lee, they talk about his philosophy, his one-inch punch, his charisma. But tucked into the legend is this story, a fight with a man twice his size, a moment that proved Bruce wasn't just a movie star, he was a warrior. And for Bolo, it ensured that whenever people talked about him, they didn't just mention Bloodsport or his massive muscles. They remembered he once faced Bruce Lee and that he held his ground. That's the power of legacy. One fight, no cameras, no script, just two men. And yet, it changed the way the world saw them both forever.
And so, the quiet clash between Bruce Lee and Bolo Yeung was never meant for the cameras. It was raw, unpolished, and hidden from the world. Yet it became a story that still echoes through time, not because of who won or lost, but because it revealed the essence of two men who embodied strength in different forms. Bruce Lee, the lightning-fast innovator who lived and died on his own terms. Bolo Yeung, the mountain of power who earned respect not through words, but through presence. Their moment together was more than a fight. It was history, crystallized in sweat and silence, in a way that film could never capture. And in that instant, they both stepped out of the screen and into legend. This is the untold heartbeat of Hollywood's golden era. This is where myth and reality collide. You've been watching Golden Era Legends, where the past never fades, and where stories like these will outlive us all.